Google came back with Genie 2, which turns text into a playable game in real time. This fundamentally changes everything, and it means that we're on the path to anyone being able to make a game. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back in Dubai. It's been about 10 years since I was last here. This city is constantly changing, constantly filled with innovation. Let me jump straight to it. I'm going to try to give you a thesis on where I think content creators can play in games in the future, and I think it's going to be quite exciting. And it's centered around a belief that AI will democratize game creation just as mobile has done for video creation. If we think about things, soon millions of creators are going to be making games. Some will be played by huge groups of fans, some just by a handful. But in every respect, a new age of games is arriving. The games business itself is huge. It's bigger than movies and music combined, but it's going to get a whole lot bigger. Now, if we step back historically and think about the games business, and it's remarkable to think that we've been a business for 50 years. Games have been built with the same formula, and that formula is pretty simple. There's a player, there's a non-player character, there's a map, and there's some code, and that essentially is a game. And it's looked like that since time immemorial. Rogue in 1980, a player, a non-player character, a map. 2D graphics arrive. Super Mario Brothers. 3D graphics arrive. Player, non-player character, map. And even today, all of our games have exactly the same construct, the same formula. And AI transforms every element of that formula. Its emergence is that radical. Players have more agency. They have new tools. Non-player characters become smarter and more engaging. There's an infinite amount of content that can then now be generated, which then becomes cheaper to build. Fundamentally, code becomes less of the barrier to being able to make a game because AI engineering completely negates it. And as a result, you end up with a category where there's so many more games, so much more innovation, so much higher quality, and so many new types and so many different formats. In essence, AI reframes everything about games. What a game is, how it gets made, who can make one, who gets to play one, how they get discovered, monetized. And, in pithy Silicon Valley parlance, that's called disruption. So just to tell you a little bit about me, I started, my career is in video and in games. I started off with Disney and Warner Brothers, helped launch DVD. I shifted to electronic arts and games. As part of the kind of era of PC entertainment, I launched Ultima Online, which was the first MMORPG. I then shifted back to video, MGM, and Paramount. I set up a Paramount Digital division for the studio. And then I spent 8 years in 2011 at YouTube. And it was part of the kind of rocket ship cycle of YouTube, where the entire ecosystem was being built, and where the thesis of fans trumping audiences was a new thing. People needed to be convinced. It's kind of crazy to think back on that time. And then I shifted back into games. I needed to feel the wind and the rain of entrepreneurship again. So the last 5 years have been in the mobile game space, grew network, sold it, and just launched a new startup called Adenic. And that's where I'm a general partner and co-founder. And essentially, we're a group of investor operators, and our mission is to usher in the next age of games. But there's a central question that we ask ourselves a lot, and it's, what if there's a whole new formula out there? What if AI could reinvent game creation? It's kind of crazy to think about it, but there's been 5 things in the last 4 months that have just validated this concept. It started in August when Google DeepMind announced that their game engine could recreate and simulate Doom without code, just trained AI models. 3 weeks later, Tencent's game Geno announced that they could use text to video to create dynamic open world game environments from text. A few weeks later, Diamond's diffusion model trained itself to simulate a Counter-Strike game level in real time. A couple of weeks later, Oasis's video model created an entire Minecraft game where every frame is AI generated. And then just last month, Google came back with Genie 2, which turns text into a playable game in real time. And I had to repeat this. It's kind of so futuristic. It turns text into a playable game in real time. This fundamentally changes everything, and it means that, not now, but next, we're on the path to anyone being able to make a game, which harkens back to that world where, people used to there used to be exclusivity around making videos, and now it's commoditized. This is essentially the world we're on, and the new formula is creator and AI inference makes game. This is a world where millions of games are available, but there's still a certain amount of hours in the day, and that creates a supply-demand challenge looming. And it means that the number one future challenge for games is not going to be creation, it's going to be discovery. And this is where creators come into play. Their ability to reach fan bases, passionate fan bases, solves discovery. And it actually turns it into a superpower. So we believe content creators are incredibly well placed. And the playbook that was created in video maps directly to games. Create formats with fan appeal, publish with the simplicity of video, promote using your same marketing channels, and then monetize. So tomorrow's content creator is video and games. Now, this world of creators as game makers has already begun. There's a number of incredibly talented Fortnite UGC creators. They're making maps. They're doing really well. The same is true on Minecraft. The same is true on Roblox. This is a world where you're starting to see the birth of this, and it's natural because they're all game-adjacent creators. And then some people are all in. Joe Garrett, big Minecraft creator, he's reimagining a spiritual successor to Minecraft. He's making Reforge. Andre Rebello, huge Fortnite creator. He's created a super studio called Jogo that's making incredibly sophisticated maps for Fortnite. So this is the start of a journey, but it's there. So 4 takeaways for you. Billions of us are game natives. AI is going to allow millions to make games. Content creators are in prime position, and the only question is when.
So next up, I actually used to work at a company called Futurism, and we used to always talk about how we may or may not be living in a simulation. Well, there are a whole bunch of gamers right now who are basically living inside of simulations with VR, AR, and XR. Our next presenter, Dr. Doom, is the co-founder and CEO of Live, a company that is making XR capture more accessible and more entertaining so that more people can see what goes on inside of these game worlds as opposed to out here in the real world. So please welcome to the stage, Dr. Doom.
All right, hello my fellow nerds. I am Dr. Doom. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Live, where we build VR and AR camera technologies. Put simply, we add cameras into your favorite apps and games so you can record videos and share them on your favorite social platforms. Now, my goal for today is I want to prove to you that now is the time to start thinking about creating and building in VR. And I know it's been a long couple of days, so I promise I won't bore you to death with a bunch of data on slides that you could easily Google or ask ChatGPT. I want to dispel what I think is the biggest misconception about VR today. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how big and, more importantly, open this opportunity is for you all. And then I want to talk less and show more, because I'm going to hop into VR and record a video inside the most popular game in VR called Gorilla Tag. So let's dispel what I think is the biggest misconception. For that, I need to give you a bit of information about myself. I am what you would call a super nerd. I mean that seriously. I used to play video games professionally, which is why my name is awkwardly Dr. Doom. When we started Live in 2016, we were a Twitch stream before we built the company, and we were the biggest VR stream for about a year. I spend most of my free time that isn't related to work or like adult responsibilities, of which there are an increasing amount, playing games online. And then most importantly, for work, I build really nerdy stuff for really nerdy people, such as myself and maybe some of you. So you might expect me to be someone who uses VR regularly, weekly or daily, but I am not. And you see, that's because VR is not for you and me. Now you're probably thinking, Doom, you're on stage, you're telling us that we should get into VR and make videos, and yet your first premise is, it's not for us. So what's going on here? So I want to explain this. By raise of hands, and this works better when you have hundreds of people in the crowd, but we'll try. Do you own or have owned the VR headset? Take a quick look around. We've got like a dozen, maybe. You have one with you. Great. Awesome. Excellent. I want you to keep your hand up if you used your headset in the last week. About less than half. Don has one of them. I believe you, actually. And I think this is part of the problem. We don't really understand that this device is not for us. However, there is a demographic that uses these devices and plays on them the way we might play on our phones, PCs, and consoles. And they look something like this. They are young boys. They're 8 to 15 years old. They will play on these devices until their parents yell at them to stop, which might sound familiar to some of you, because that is very much me, or was me. And when they grow up, they want to become YouTubers and TikTokers. That was me when I was a kid, like I said. I'm sure that was some of you. I see some people smiling in the crowd. At 8, I used to play the Super Nintendo. My mom used to yell at me to not sit too close to the screen. Joke's on you, Mom. It's now on my face, literally. And at 13, I got access to the internet. And I remember that day like it was one of my favorite moments. I never really stopped playing online and meeting people online. And yet, around me, I remember that adults used to think that this was a toy. They didn't really understand why I was spending so much time in these games. As adults, we tend to forget what it's like to be 8 years old. We have infinite time, no responsibilities, this youthful curiosity because we don't have any responsibilities, and therefore this ample canvas to build new habits on. We are not fully formed humans yet. And from those 8-year-olds with their toys, people like me 15 years ago, 20 years ago, grew today's gaming industry. Like we heard from Alex and others here, more than double the size of music and film combined. Massive, massive industry, seeping into all fragments of our society. That's where VR is today. It is what used to be the early consoles and the early PCs. And I want to show this to you by showing some data around this. So the Meta Quest is one of many headsets, but it's very much the most successful headset. And we all know the Xbox. In the last 3 years, this is from before this holiday season, the Meta Quest has outsold the Xbox every single year. And this year, it outsold the PlayStation and the Xbox. In fact, it was also the #1 app on all the app stores, meaning iOS and Google Play. Now you might wonder, how is that possible given that it's a headset and not a mobile app? When you buy a Meta Quest, you have to install it with a mobile app. So it tells you how popular these devices are getting. The other thing that I want to understrike here is the difference between adults and teens. So this is retention graphs, and some of you might not be familiar with how these play out. The difference between the gray graph and the red graph here, all else equal, is the difference between linear growth and exponential growth. In other words, kids are driving this platform forward. And then we've heard a lot about Fortnite, Roblox, Overwolf, all these booming creator platforms. And what I want you to understand is that not only is the revenue made in these spaces slowly catching up in VR and beating some of them already, but because the competition is so small, you have this incredible opportunity to get in there and reap outsized rewards for your efforts. Now, some of you are video creators, and you're saying, Doom, I'm not a developer, I'm not building games. And that's right, but guess what? In order to make videos for apps and games that people want to watch, they have to want to play and consume those games as either developers or makers of those games. So you are downstream from that industry, and this should tell you that this is very much the time to get in there. Now, one thing that's really important is we all carry our phones in our pocket. I put mine in my bag, actually, so I'm not going to pull it out. And because of that, we saw the social media revolution spawn. We could, at any time, take this out and record our favorite moments. Now I want to take you to this slide. Now I know what this looks like. You're saying, Doom, that the Meta Quest is selling like the iPhone. And that is indeed true. We don't remember what the iPhone was like when it first launched. But what we're not saying here is that the Meta Quest is like the iPhone. We don't carry our Meta Quests around every day like we do with our phones. What I really want to drive your attention to is the following. How many of you are content creators, video content creators on social media? A few, great. So I want you to imagine that you knew everything that you already know today about content creation. How to make content, how to differentiate yourself, how to drive an audience, how to carve out your niche. And then I want you to teleport to October 2010, the beginning of Instagram, or 2005, February, beginning of YouTube, or 2007, beginning of Twitch. Take all that learning and now you're in a fresh market. And you get to really carve out this niche for yourself before everyone and their mother shows up. That is the opportunity in VR today. And I can prove this to you because our company, Live, has been around for 7 years. And in this last month, this data is outdated. I looked it up before, so I'm going to give you the updated data. We have 1.5 million monthly active creators. They generated 18 million videos this month, which is roughly 700,000 hours, 70 years of video. And since launching in 2018, our creators have driven over 5 billion views to their videos on TikTok and YouTube primarily, but also Twitch, Snapchat, pretty much anywhere you can distribute video. And I want to show you, I got 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so now we're going to switch over to my screen, and I'm going to goof around in VR a little bit. Aha, now you can see yourselves. All right, let me grab my little menu here, and we're going to hop into Gorilla Tag. Now, Gorilla Tag is the most popular game in VR. You are a gorilla, and you play tag. So in case you needed any more proof that this is a game for kids or a platform for kids, this should prove it to you. Now in the real world, if I want to record a video, what I would do is I would pull my phone out of my pocket, or I would grab a camera in my house somewhere, like a DSLR, and that's exactly how it works with Live inside of your favorite apps. So I'm going to go over here. Hello, hello. Now I've got my Live phone powered by Live here. And I can just record any kind of video inside of my favorite experience. I don't need any hardware. I don't need any additional application. It just works inside VR. One of the beauties about our kind of cameras, virtual cameras, is that they're like regular cameras, but with tons of steroids. Meaning you can do all kinds of things with physical cameras that you cannot do with real cameras. My mouth isn't moving, by the way, because we turn off the microphone so it doesn't cause interference here. But otherwise, it would, of course, move. Now, I've got a selfie camera. I can film myself like this, of course. I got all kinds of cool features, like on the iPhone. I can zoom in and out if I'd like. I can add a bunch of smoothing so that the camera is nice and smooth when I move it. I can flip the camera, and then I see the back of the camera. I can also do some of the stuff that I know Don is going to show you in a second here, which I can film through my eyes, called first person, as if I was wearing Meta Ray-Bans or Snapchat spectacles. And same thing here, I can change the FOV of this camera, add a bunch of smoothing so it doesn't shake when I move around. And then I can also do things like drone cameras. If I want the camera to follow me around intelligently while I'm playing, either from front or behind, I can do the same thing here, add a bunch of settings to it to make it look and feel the way I want it to look and feel. Whenever I'm ready, I'm going to flip back here. Whenever I'm ready and I want to record a video, whether it's a horizontal video or a vertical video for TikTok, I can just press this recording button and say, hello everyone, I'm at the 1 Billion Followers Summit, presenting on stage right now. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to everyone who's been helping out with the production, especially Rachel, Shaklo, Katya, and everyone on the production team. When you're done, yes, excellent, congrats. Well done, everyone. When we're done, we're going to press this button, the video saves, and now you can export it to your favorite social platform, to your CapCut editing software, your Adobe software, wherever you want, just like any other video. And with that, I am done. Bye, nerds. And this is called VR hair, by the way. If you have nice hair, it ruins it for you.
That was great. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You go in the middle.
We have a little bit of time for questions, and I have many. My first is really, when we think about when I think about games, I should say, I really do think in terms of what games are being played today, right? There's a beginning, middle, end, or some kind of ranking system. But other than that, it's kind of stasis. I would love to hear, like, what are some of the formats or game types that are kind of, now that the technology is evolving, what other kinds of games could be built in either format or community building. I just I see a lot of possibility.
Yeah.
It almost breaks my brain. So I don't know, Alex. I feel like everything's
I
changing.
I could take a crack at that. I think if you like fast forward to, I don't know, the year 2030, symbolically, what a game is and what it isn't is just going to be so radically different. If you think about how, Peloton has gamified fitness, Duolingo, language learning, Zoom for weight loss. I mean, the gamification of everything is kind of permeated every industry, and I think that you'll start to see game experiences that are much shorter, much more ephemeral. There'll be, teams that are 1 or 2 people who are able to develop just on the concept in a category you didn't even think could be considered a game. I won't sort of try to look at a crystal ball and kind of tell you about a special multimodal experience that could be played, either with a device or not, but I think there'll be an awful lot of them.
I'll talk from the VR perspective. So what we see in VR is what we call loose constructs for social play. In other words, they're not really games. They are a playground replacement. Instead of going to the playground and playing with your friends on the swings or playing tag, you hop into the headset, you become some character, and then you just hang out with your friend. And so they are natively social, they're voice first. They're actually kind of like the Roblox generation, but slightly younger. We call them Generation Alpha and the upcoming Generation Beta. So they're very, very young, and they're primarily there to hang out and meet their friends.
Yeah.
And so it is a different experience. They're not core games. You're not trying to compete with people, although as they age up, so will their experiences as well, and the games that they consume. So there are, for example, very competitive multiplayer shooters. If anyone plays games here, there's Warzone-like games, Call of Duty Warzone-like games in VR, where you parachute physically with a parachute, and you glide down, and you pick up the gun, and you load the weapon, and you do all those things as well. So it's the full range of experience, but focused heavily on social with your friends.
This seems like it's going to make gaming even more fun and accessible for young people, it sounds like, in both regards. How does that change the kind of skill building and what they can do? Like you, my mother said, turn the video games off.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like I learned a lot about problem solving, just playing like Zelda games and puzzle games as a kid. Yeah. What are the games that are being built going to do for the next generation of children and the kind of work and jobs and careers they could have? I don't know, Alex, maybe whoever's got.
Yeah, I mean the beauty of games will persist. The fundamental benefits of interactive engagement and the ability to find community, to find like minds, that will just continue to grow. I think it will be multi-generational. I don't think we're talking exclusively about kids. I'm imagining a world where everyone is playing some form of a game. It's just what is considered a game fundamentally changes. So I think all of those behaviors will perpetuate, and there'll be a whole lot more that we won't even realize.
I'll give you an analogy that I've told a lot of people, and then I think we're out of time here. My granddad, before he passed, used to still listen to the radio, even though radio is not the coolest anymore. And that's because he grew up with the radio, and that was his platform. And I grew up with games, and I'm going to keep playing games until the day I die. I know this. It's not going away. And so we're going to have this expansion of the market upwards, where we have games for 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, all the way until end of life. So I do think gaming is going to expand because of that. The other thing that we've now found is that gaming is very much a mental exercise, can keep you fresh, can keep you alert, can keep your reactions high. And so I think we're getting away from what my mom used to think, that gaming is bad. And I think that's a net positive for the next generation as well, with the caveats, of course, that it is very much a dopamine source, and we have to treat that with utmost care.
Take that, Mom.
Take that, Mom.
I
love you, Mom.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you both for building this and showing us what the future looks like when it comes to video games.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.